Despite the Orioles' woes in the East Bay, they will move to the West Bay and take on the San Francisco Giants. But the one thing they cannot affect, even with victories, is what the Blue Jays are doing, conversely. And got a guy here up in Toronto covering the National Football League for Bleacher Report, but he is a Blue Jays fan. We always sneak a little baseball in. I think a couple weeks ago he joined us. We did more baseball than we did football. But it is football season. We welcome back one of our defending champions and our Canadian correspondent. He is the NFL columnist at Bleacher Report and a contributor at CBS Sports as well as Awful Announcing. You can follow his journey and see how he outkicked his coverage in Toronto, Canada at Brad_Gagnon. That's Gagnon. We welcome him back. What's going on, Brad? How are you? How does it feel to displace the Orioles here from first place for a little while?
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess it officially took place just this week, and then now all alone. They've been tied on a few different occasions.
It'll be back and forth. It's a limited time offer, I think, for any
injury with San Francisco. Ultra competitive division with Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins taking over for Alex Anthopoulos, and as a result, that's showing in the attendance numbers. So hopefully now, Rogers, the owner of the Blue Jays, sees this and says, okay, maybe we can continue to make more money if we can continue to invest more money in this team. And it's not as simple as just trying to get to some specific plateau and max your spending out at 150 or 150 million a year. And that's where we're at right now.
Well, and I would say if last year didn't do the trick, this year might do the trick. But this late season surge, man, I was up there 13 months ago on my tour, and no one cared about the Blue Jays. And now, I can't get Greg Zahn to give me a call back because he's too busy. It's crazy up there with his Sunday roast and all that other stuff. You got a diamond, you got 9 men, you got a hat, a bat, and that's not all, right? I love the OK Blue Jays thing. So I like a good pennant race. We have not had a pennant race in Baltimore in this generation. I mean, even at 12, nobody bought in, and 14, the Orioles ran away from everyone. Now it's scratching and clawing, and I kind of like that every day there's a game that matters. And I think it makes it fun for all the baseball fans. But in the meantime, we are suffering through this horrific preseason garbage in the National Football League. And Brad Gagnon covers the National Football League from Canada for Bleacher Report and is joining us here not just to talk about the Blue Jays, which I'm sure you and I will be battling that out over the next 8 weeks anyway. From an NFL perspective, look, we got the Ravens here. We went through all of the young players and who's going to play, and Flacco not playing, and Mallett playing. But there are quarterback issues throughout the NFL right now, and I know you've been documenting this. We know who our quarterback is here, even though he's not playing. In Denver and San Francisco and Houston, some other places, they have some real question marks as to how this is going to go. And Lord knows there's been a lot of investment made, as well as draft picks, whether it's Mariota and Winston from last year or whether this year it's Goff, what's going on in Philadelphia. There's a lot of quarterback issues this time of year, and at least for us, it feels like Flacco's health's okay, and that's one thing we're not as concerned about.
Yeah, it's a particularly interesting environment for that, the quarterback battles and quarterback situations this season, mainly because, as you just mentioned, there's been this invigoration in terms of, tons of solid quarterbacks coming in the first round the last few drafts, particularly last year and this year, and even a few years ago with RG3, Andrew Luck, Ryan Tannehill, all being first-round picks. And so there's been a lot of really high-quality rookies come into the league the last few years. No one wants to retire. Peyton Manning has walked away, but Tom Brady's 39, Drew Brees late 30s, Tony Romo's 36, Carson Palmer I believe is also 36. So quarterbacks don't retire anymore. Tons of good ones are coming into the league, and all of a sudden there's a lot of high quality quarterbacks. And I always, in the famous cliche I like to use, is there's 32 NFL teams and fewer than 32 NFL starting caliber quarterbacks. That's sort of changing, and no longer is it necessarily the if you have two good quarterbacks, you have quarterbacks, or two starting quarterbacks, you have no starting quarterbacks, because there are some options. But we live in a world right now, Nestor, where the Cleveland Browns have a concrete quarterback situation and the defending Super Bowl champions do not. So that's pretty weird. And RG3 is slated to start for the Browns. Maybe, that's not something that they're, a lot of folks have high expectations regarding, but he was the offensive rookie of the year a few years ago. And I think the Denver Broncos would love to have RG3 right now, because Mark Sanchez comes in and he, of course, flamed out with the Jets. Wasn't able to jump up and claim a starting spot with the Eagles in a couple years there. Number 5 overall pick. He was probably, I don't know if you use the word bust completely, but he's pretty close to that. He was supposed to do a lot more with his career. This is probably his final shot, and yet he's not even able to gain the starting role over a 2015 7th-round pick that hardly anyone knows, named Trevor Siemian. And so the fact that they're co-starters on the initial depth chart that Denver released, although Sanchez will start the preseason opener, that's sort of an indictment on Sanchez at this point in time. Siemian would actually become, if he was to somehow win this week 1 starting job, he'd be the first quarterback in his first or second year out of college, drafted in the 7th round or beyond, to start week 1 since 1980. And so, this is basically unprecedented, and yet we're talking about the defending Super Bowl champions going through this sort of mess situation. They're waiting on Paxton Lynch, who they drafted in the 1st round in April, and there's a pretty widely held belief that he won't be ready to start this season, and if he is starting, it probably is an indication that things went awry for Denver's season. So it makes things very interesting as we get the preseason underway, because Denver's got a big issue. San Francisco with Kaepernick and Gabbert, 2 guys who at various points have been seen as future stars and now are seen as busts at both levels. They're going to battle for that starting job, and of course, you mentioned Houston. Brock Osweiler will make his debut. 7 starts that he's making in his career, yet he's making $18 million a year, and he's going to have a lot of pressure on him to make a strong first impression when they get the preseason underway on Sunday evening against San Francisco, and so that'll be a good game from both quarterback standpoints.
We are chatting with Brad Gagnon from Bleacher Report. He covers the National Football League from Toronto, Canada. He's a Blue Jays fan, which makes us all say boo this weekend, at least for the time being, and certainly for the next 7 weeks. We're not going to get along nearly this well as the pennant race gets going. You talk about quarterbacks getting sort of pinched out. We got Ryan Mallett here. Nick Foles gets shown the gate on Hard Knocks. I still haven't seen it over the weekend, but RG3 turns up in Cleveland. Kirk Cousins turns up in the top 100 quarterbacks in the NFL, and Joe Flacco and Matt Ryan aren't in it. It's amazing how these stocks sort of go up and down very, very quickly this time of the year, where, look, in any city where the quarterback's not doing well, the most popular guy in town's always the backup quarterback.
Yeah, and you're right about, this roller coaster, and that's because we have no patience anymore. Owners don't have patience. GMs know that their jobs are on the line. Coaches know that they need to win immediately and that they need quarterback play in order to win. The one thing we attach to wins more than anything is strong quarterback play. So even if a team isn't winning, if they're getting a lot out of their quarterback, there's sort of this glass half full mentality. Like, okay, as long as we got the quarterback situation in place, now we just need to surround him with guys. And some examples of that from recent years, particularly in Jacksonville and Oakland, where Derek Carr and Blake Bortles have shown those signs of being, franchise quarterbacks in the making. Their teams haven't really been winning, but there's definitely kind of an optimistic mentality in both of those cities. And now they've given those guys some support, and they could take off. So, so that's why we have sort of this, this constantly fluctuating sort of temperature in some of these cities where teams aren't set in stone. And you saw it with Andrew Luck just last year. I mean, a lot of people thought he could win the MVP, and then he got ravaged by injuries. They didn't have good pass protection. He was hurt all season long, missed the majority of the season, but even when he was out there, he wasn't himself. And his passer rating was building up, consistently throughout the early part of his career, and then it just completely fell off. And a lot of people question, well, maybe he isn't going to become the superstar we all expected, and now this might be kind of a make or break year, as he's now being paid $23.5 million a year, whatever that new contract's giving him. So, RG3, same deal. Only 4 years into his career, after that rookie season, people thought he was the next, the second coming of a Steve Young, and after winning Offensive Rookie of the Year and putting up unprecedented numbers as a rookie quarterback, and then the knee injury wasn't quite the same year too. Hardly saw the field in year 3, and now here he is in a completely new setting, starting for the Cleveland Browns with their 25th starting quarterback since 1999. So, it really is. It's just so hard, unless you're a Brady, a Breeze, a Rodgers, or a Manning, to consistently be on top in any city in the NFL these days, because all it takes is a few bad starts, and all of a sudden it's, they're calling you out and questioning you, and that backup quarterback, it becomes even more beloved.
Well, I'll tell you what, in all these places, we're watching Hard Knocks with the Rams. We got the Raiders sort of on the come, and then there are the Chargers. All the teams trying to get to L.A. The Chargers, I mean, they are really becoming sort of a bag on the head kind of franchise, right? I mean, they've pissed on their own community. They've tried to leave. They can't leave, but they're still open to leave. Weddle's here playing ball and is delighted to have escaped that cesspool out there. And now they can't figure out how to get Bosa signed, and Gates is popping off about it. Stevie Johnson's out for the year. What a mess in San Diego, right?
And it's not ballots coming up in the fall, and you're trying to keep your team in San Diego to begin with, or maybe this is some sort of act of sabotage because it's really poor optics, and a lot of it early seemed to be on Joey Bosa or his camp because they said, okay, well, this is a rookie slotting system. Like everyone signs, it's pretty set in stone at this point. What could he possibly be putting up a fight over, or what could his camp be putting a fight over? And then we started to think about it, and you thought, okay, LaDainian Tomlinson had that long holdout in 2001, or at least that impasse between him and the team. Quentin Jammer, Phillip Rivers, Sean Merriman. Okay, now what's the common denominator here? And are the San Diego Chargers putting up too much of a fight with a guy who simply, it seems, wants one or the other in terms of offset language, which essentially enables the team to be off the hook if the player is released and signs with another team in a few years, or deferring his bonus by, a year or two, or spreading that bonus out. So essentially it's timing of the bonus and offset languages. Both are very small things. Both, if Bosa excels in his career, are not going to become factors whatsoever anyway. But his camp's saying one or the other. We're not both. We're not going to have offset language in this contract and also defer my bonus. And it seems as though the Chargers, because they have a very specific policy in place amongst their front office on this, are digging in. And I think at this point it's become the risk reward on that decision doesn't seem to add up. And they're starting to take a hit in the media. Bosa's starting to take a hit in the media. They have players, as you mentioned, calling out other players, and Antonio Gates saying, be a man. None of that is good for fans in the seats who want to support this team in San Diego, good for wins and losses, or good for the team's overall morale.
And they're probably going to stink anyway, and the fans probably aren't going to come, right? I mean, this looks like a Titanic about to happen, right? It looks like it's going to hit an iceberg at some point. The whole thing I'm talking about.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason why they haven't been hitting icebergs on an annual basis, if you will, is because of Phillip Rivers. He's a good quarterback. And again, it goes back to what I just said about that glass being half full regardless of your quarterback. And having a good quarterback can sort of mask a lot of things and make you think you're better than you are. The San Diego Chargers aren't very good. They don't have a good defense. They don't have anyone who stands up. They don't rush the passer well. They don't protect the quarterback very well. They get ravaged by injuries. They have injury-prone players. They have washed-up players who got kicked out of other cities. You mentioned obviously losing Stevie Johnson. He wasn't exactly a huge part of things, but they don't have a great group of receivers. They basically have, at this point in time, Phillip Rivers and Keenan Allen. And besides that, they don't have much. But in the NFL in 2015, 2016, that's the kind of thing that can keep you grasping at that dangling carrot in spite of the rest of yourself, the rest of your team. And so I think they're probably a drastically overrated team in one of the hardest divisions in football, and they're probably set up to fail. You're right. And they're not rebuilding because they continue to think we need to capture this while we have the Phillip Rivers era, first of all, and also before we move to Los Angeles, if that's when push comes to shove, what has to happen here.
Well, what has to happen is they need to get a vote, and a vote they're probably not going to get. The Raiders want to go to Las Vegas, and then on top of that, I mean, the Chargers might be a 3-13 or 2-4. They might have the number one pick again next April.
And that's what they almost need. That's what I'm getting at here, is that they almost need that wake-up call that you are not on the verge of a Super Bowl. You have a good quarterback, but you don't have much else. You're not on the verge of making a run here. The Raiders are a better team than you now. The Chiefs have proved last year they are a better team than you, and they did it with a smattering of injuries. And, of course, the Denver Broncos remain a better team. You're the worst of the four teams in your division. You haven't had success in years. And you might need that 3-13 season again. I know, again, one didn't do the job here when they had a top 3 pick with Joey Bosa, where you need to smarten up and say, maybe we need to draft a quarterback. Maybe we need to address some other areas other than just complimenting Phillip Rivers. Because how old is Phillip Rivers? I believe he's 34 or 35 now. He's 34. And so, he's got a couple years left maybe, but maybe you start to think about the future and a guy who could learn and be his successor behind him right now, because this just isn't working.
Brad Gagnon is here, the NFL insider at Bleacher Report. You can follow his journey out on the internet as well on Twitter at Brad_Gagnon. Great having you on, bro. Always a pleasure. I don't wish anything good on the Toronto Blue Jays right now. It's war, literally. Jose
Bautista's back on the DL, so maybe that you're sending negative vibes already, and although he's struggled this year, so who knows?
Beware Dylan Bundy. That's all I'm saying to you, Brad. Beware Dylan Bundy.
We are aware of him, that's for sure. Beware of Aaron Sanchez, though. It's a two-way street.
All right, man. It's we'll talk again soon, I'm sure, and who knows who'll be in for. Sure. We might both be bitching about the Red Sox by the time we get together next time, right?
I would not rule that out.
There he goes, Brad Gagnon, NFL columnist at Bleacher Report. You can find me in the Bahia Toyota Audio Vault all weekend long here at WNST.net. You can also email me, nasty@WNST.net, anytime, anywhere you are. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports. Thanks, Brad. Great having you on, bud.
Anytime, man. Have a good weekend.
Take care. Be well. Bye-bye.